Hey, Vinyl community, it's Mazzy here, and I have a guest from the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and from New Jersey. I have Dylan, the record spinner,
Hello, hello.
and we're going to do just an overview on Pink Floyd, their entire, pretty much, I think, their studio catalog. There might be a few excursions,
Okay.
and apparently Dylan did one best from worst to best, or rated him. We're not rating, and we're going to go in chronological order and just discuss. And for me, it's interesting because we're different generations. I'm like the generation that grew up with Pink Floyd, and obviously you're not. And so I'm really curious. You can talk to how you got into this band as you go along, record
Absolutely.
your entry point, and if there's an exit point. I realized out of all the records, there's one I do not have, and one I have on CD, not on vinyl, but one I don't have at all. And I remember why I don't have it at all, but I'll wait till we get to it
Okay.
because I hate
Okay.
the record. That's why.
Now I'm curious now what that album is.
Yeah, I mean, there's always good I mean, there's a couple others that maybe I'm not so hot with towards the end, but anyway, we'll take it from there. So,
Cool.
why don't you start, and then we both can jump in
Yeah,
as we go along.
absolutely. So, what better place to start than the very beginning? Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Um, Now, with the early Floyd, I understand it's kind of somewhat an acquired taste depending on the listener, but this album is extremely crucial. Nice, nice. If it wasn't for this gentleman right here, there would be no Pink Floyd. Syd Barrett was the catalyst of this whole thing. And this album it's predominantly all Barrett compositions. You have like Astronomy Domine, Lucifer Sam, Matilda Mother, Scarecrow, Bike, all that good stuff. And then, of course, you have some of like the psychedelic jams that they would do live at like the UFO Club and whatnot with Interstellar Overdrive is the notable one. Power Talk Age is another one. This is just perhaps one of the quintessential Summer of '67 albums, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's so sad just how the man had turned out once this album had come out, and just later on. It's a really sad story, but this is his crowning jewel in terms of his whole kind of creativity, his whole ideology in terms of his music. This is the one.
Acid Casualty, crazy in that
Yep.
respect. Going on that, I want to talk a little about, as an introduction, this is a book by Joe Boyd.
Ooh.
This is an autobiography. Joe Boyd was a producer, American guy who went to England, uh, actually started the UFO Club, which a lot of people pronounce UFO because that's the way it's spelled, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the UFO Club. London was going through a parallel thing that what San Francisco was going through, except London had sort of the rock and roll elite of the Beatles and the Stones and all the bands, where the Rollings, where San Francisco had all the hippies and the burnouts, plus the psychedelic, the Dead and the Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver. But Joe Boyd went to the UK, and Pink Floyd became the house band at some point on the UFO Club. Joe Boyd ended up producing a lot of early folk rock records by Fairport Convention, incredible string band. He discovered and produced uh, Pink Moon, Nick Drake,
Drake,
and
yeah.
others. And the thing is, he was starting to manage and produce the very first Pink Floyd single, which was Arnold Lane. And he got them their signing to EMI, the Parlophone, and wanted to produce them. But in those days, you had to use the on-staff producers. So Norman
Yep.
Smith, who had been working engineering the Beatles record, went over and finally got his gig, and he produced it. So Joe Boyd produced that first Arnold Lane single that was their first, a semi-hit, but was never
Somewhat,
on
yeah.
an album until in America and some of the reissues and things. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
was on Relics later. But
Yeah, it appears on the Relics album.
yeah. And I'm going to show that, but I'm not going to really discuss that when we get to
Okay.
that point. But Joe Boyd, unfortunately, you sign this band, you get him signed, and you can't friggin' produce their record.
Yeah, like he was just there temporarily, and then as soon as they got propelled to EMI, it was just like, all right, we're kind of done.
Yeah, and they got Norman
Yeah.
Smith for their, I think, 3 or 4 records after that.
What was the nickname? Like, was it Hurricane Norman? Was that his
Hurricane Smith? Yeah, he actually had a single of his own that was a hit, which is kind of a novelty record. God, when was that? I'm thinking that was in the '70s, early '70s. I remember it.
Was
Oh,
it?
Babe, What Can You Say? It's almost like a roaring 20s kind of it's a bizarre thing. It's kind of like
Wow.
think of that's a whole cliche of producers who ended up making hit records or making records just out of Abbey Road. You got Alan Parsons too,
Of
who did the
course.
whole Alan Parsons project, who also worked with the Beatles and then obviously Pink Floyd. So I so I never got that first Pink Floyd record when it came out. I did have Arnold Layne, but the first Pink Floyd record I got is this, and this is
Oh.
Saucerful of Secrets, and this is a Tower Records copy. This particular, I got it when it came out, but this particular copy is from about 1971, I believe.
Okay.
And it's in like perfect shape. Tower Records was sort of a budget label, not a budget label, but an offshoot small label of Capitol Records in the United States. And obviously it has Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, Saucerful of Secrets, Jigsaw Puzzle. And this is pretty much the last album that Syd Barrett was on at any length.
Yeah. Yeah, Jug Band Blues was his like kind of farewell, and then it's been said that he plays guitar on a little bit of Set the Controls, which is, I guess, the one Floyd track that has both David Gilmour and Syd Barrett doing guitar work. So
right.
That's kind of
exactly. They basically were bringing Gilmour in because Barrett was out of there, and so they'd bring him to live concerts, and they ended up just not picking him up at the gig and like going with David Gilmour. I'm throwing this in only because this was a Record Store Day that came out a couple of years. It's studio from 1966. Not sure exactly where it was recorded, possibly at Thompson Recording Studio in Hampstead. But this is a studio version, early Floyd, the original Floyd, kind of a 12-inch novelty. Not the greatest sound, but if you're into Floyd, it's a great album.
Yeah, it's a must-have.
Yeah.
I was so, real quick, I just have to mention it. I was so pissed off because on Record Store Day, I stood in line and the guy in front of me got the one copy. I was so mad.
And you eventually got it, though.
Yeah, literally going on Discogs. This was before I learned the kind of wait until you see a justifiable deal. I was just like, screw it. Placed an order on Discogs from some seller in like Poland. It was ridiculous, but I learned my lesson.
Most of these early records are kind of messed up and hard to get in good shape originals. And I actually I think the reissues that came out that James Guthrie mastered a few years ago sound really good. And I do have that. And then I have the Record Store Day mono one as well.
Yep, I have that as well. And also do you have this one as well? The mono Piper?
Great. Yeah, I have that too, and I didn't show that, but yeah, people are saying, this stuff's great, but the reissue series are really good, and they're really well mastered, and I think they're from digital sources, but I'm not if they sound good, I'm not a snooty about that. It's kind of like James Guthrie did these. James Guthrie did the Kate Bush reissues that sound really good, but I'm a fan of these, so I suggest any of these reissues from, I think it was 2016, are well worth
that's when they started it. I think this may have been the best reissue series ever. Actually, let me pull out the Piper one. Obviously, it's not a faithful replication, but you see it kind of has that fold over back cover, like the old UK issues.
Oh, right. Well, they have actually what they did here on this, they did the phony tip down sleeve.
That's the one.
Yeah, they did it on the reissue. They didn't do a real fold out, but I get into some audiophile and some really cranky, really specific music matter jazz things where you're paying for this extra thing. And I love that, but it comes down to the music. But of course,
exactly.
I mean, I got all these CDs here, so I'm not just a vinyl purist. So certain records, or when I'm working, I'm in my office right now. When I'm working, I'm playing CDs or digital. All my CDs are on a hard drive. But when I'm upstairs is where I really kind of sit back and have
you absorb.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
The More soundtrack. So, interesting soundtrack altogether. This is kind of basically a very traditional soundtrack in every sense. So, the director of the film, Barbet Schroeder, wanted, there's that label again, nice.
Yeah, this is the Tower version. Yeah.
That's the Tower? Cool. That's so awesome. He had wanted the Floyd to compose a soundtrack that was kind of literal. Like if you go to if you turn on a car stereo, you obviously hear something. You're at a party, you hear a record playing in the background. He wanted something like that. It's quite funny when I was getting into like the Floyd's catalog. When I started listening to them, I picked this up, and the opening track, Cirrus Minor, it just sets the mood. It has Richard Wright's Farfisa organ just all over it. But then the next track, the Nile song, I was like, holy crap. It sounds straight out of like 1969 kind of garage rock from Detroit. It's so awesome. Then, of course, the big highlights on here, which were also big stage favorites for the Floyd back in the day, was Green is the Color and Cymbeline. And then you also get things like Quicksilver, which is like an ethereal kind of instrumental piece, somewhat similar to like Saucerful of Secrets a little bit. Spanish piece, more blues, things of that sort, little like musical bits and pieces. But yeah, definitely a pretty cool soundtrack to check out.
I'm a big fan of Floyd doing soundtracks, and this is actually the first of two films they did with Barbette Schroeder. Years later, he did films like A Single White Female and did some American films, which is with Bridget Fonda. But he did this and
Okay.
Love LA, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I love this stuff. And the other one, which I don't have here because it's not just a Floyd record, and I'm not sure if you brought it, but I suggest anyone out there to pick it up. And it's Zabriskie Point. The soundtrack to Zabriskie Point, when it originally came out, it was a single LP. I don't have the single LP. I have the expanded. I'm not sure if it's MGM or 20th Century, that expanded edition. And what's great, it has all these jammy spirituals, psychedelic stuff of Pink Floyd. It's got Love Scene guitar stuff by Jerry Garcia. It's got the Young Bloods. It's really a great. I should have pulled it just to show it, but
is that the 2 LP version?
Yep.
I had it literally in my Discogs car. I was going to get it one week, and then all of a sudden it was gone. I'm just
it's
damn.
a great listen, even though it's not just Pink Floyd, because it's
absolutely
1969 or 70, maybe it's 1970.
69 going into 70.
Yeah. And of course, I always say I'm not going to show this. I'm just going to run it through. I don't know if this counts. I'm just going to show what Relics looks like.
Yeah,
so
Relics.
People should know this was sort of a best of that collected like singles and thing. Arnold Lade's, yeah, exactly. This is the original American version in this country.
Yeah,
I think Nick
they had
Mason,
a couple variations of that.
I think Nick Mason did the cover, as I recall, for this one.
He did, yes.
The reissue is well worth picking up because it has Arnold Lane on it, just for that. And then it's the rest of the stuff's produced by Norman Smith. But that doesn't count for me. That's not my counter.
One interesting thing too, I should point out, and this is kind of where it gets into sort of geeky kind of mixed territory. The versions of Paintbox and Julia Dream are true stereo mixes, and this is the only album that you'll find those mixes on.
See, there you go. See, all this stuff, as much as I know about the band, know about everything, I don't know all those details, or I don't remember. I know a lot of details, but those I don't. So I love that you're doing this. Now, I'm going to do a story about this one too, just because since I'm older than you and haven't experienced it, this was the second Pink Floyd album I got. Again, I went back and got more after I got this. This is 69, and this was a double album. And I remember buying this partly because I love the cover and I like Pink Floyd. I didn't really exactly know what this was going to be like. And also, it was a double album for not much more than a single album. So when you're a kid, like, oh my God, I can get a double album. It's certain albums around that time, like the first Chicago Transit Authority, Taj Mahal had an album, and they were like $1 more, 50 cents more for a double album. So you buy it just for that.
Wow.
One record is alive, is show in Manchester and Birmingham. And then one is sort of a disc of 4 separate solo, almost like pretentious pieces of music. And actually, my favorite are the Roger Waters pieces. They're kind of out there. One of them is, to me, the best name of a song they ever did. Several species of a small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict.
Yes.
And that, and actually Grantchester Meadows, is a beautiful piece. Great sound effects. I mean, some of the other stuff
highlight
is really, I mean, the Nick Mason stuff, percussive, everything else. I would say the Richard Wright stuff might be the most pretentious on here. But again,
I think maybe Sisyphus's Richard
you like
Wright's contribution.
you think okay. There's a lot of pretense on this record. Over the years, I got into better the live stuff more, but I go back and forth. This is a kind of a love hate, but I love the cover, and I was at a friend's house, and again, so I was 14 years old when this came out, and I was at a friend's house who had an older brother and a girlfriend that were there, and we stayed overnight because the parents were away. And my friends and I wasn't doing any kind of drugs at the time, but they took peyote that night. And I remember they took peyote and they kept playing this record over and over all night. I swear to God. So it must have been, 10, 12, 15 times over and over. So I got to know it really well there. And I always loved, obviously, that cover.
Yeah, that's a cool back cover.
Yeah, the reissue sounds great. I got the reissue, but this is probably a mid-70s. Yeah, this is like a 74 pressing. So this is not my original. Yeah. I did have an original copy, but when I worked in record stores, what we would do is we'd bring the discs. We would trade out the discs that we had worn for a few years and trade it for the next version of the disc. So we got a pristine copy.
Okay.
But looking back on it, it was a stupid thing to do because we got rid of all our original label pressings, but we weren't thinking about that in those days.
I was going to say, like, you don't have that, like, kind of collecting mentality back then. You're just thinking, oh, I'm getting an upgrade.
You had no idea. Now that it's the same thing. It's another discussion. I'm going to do a video in a week or two with Jam on Vinyl about mono. And, we didn't give a shit about mono in the 70s. Like now everyone's like creaming in their jeans over mono stuff. One thing I did forget, this is the only CD I want to show because this is an expanded set of Piper at the Gates of Dawn with singles and B-sides and French edit stereo versions, alternate versions. Mm-hmm. And this is a great collection. Didn't come out in this form on vinyl at all. But it's a cool set for Pink Floyd completists. Which I have that
myself. It's somewhere in my CD collection. I have like totes of CDs underneath my bed, but I do have that for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay.
Next up, it's the one with the cow on the front, Atom Heart Mother. As much as the band hates this record, I absolutely adore it. This was another one of those early albums that I picked up while I was getting into them. This, of course, features orchestrations done by composer Ron Giesen, who had done some work with Roger around the same time. They did this thing called Music from the Body, which was kind of like a soundtrack to this like BBC documentary kind of thing. It's really cool. The way it's structured is that, the orchestra is kind of up at the forefront and the Floyd's kind of playing in the back. So it's kind of an interesting way of how they went about it. Like I said, the band hates this record. I think it's a rather interesting piece, not so much that it fits within the sort of evolution of their sound, but it is an interesting point. And then the B-side is kind of like an Ummagumma situation where each member contributes a piece. You have Roger Waters with If, Richard Wright's Summer 68. The highlight is David Gilmour's Fat Old Son. It's just a beautiful pastoral song. And then you have Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which has like the sound of eggs being cooked and faucets going on. It's crazy.
It's their roadie, right? It's their roadie.
Yeah.
I
believe he's also on the back cover of Ummagumma. He's one of the two guys. And I actually have a really awesome story to share with this album because back when I was in middle school and high school, I was actually in a band with my best friend. We were just a covers band. We did a little bit of everything. I was kind of thinking of what stuff we hadn't done because like we tried to do all kinds of things. We did like unplugged acoustic things and whatnot. Since there was no available score to purchase for Atom Heart Mother, I actually scored it myself. And this was with no knowledge of like music theory and how trumpets were tuned differently to pianos. It was all kind of done by ear. I have the score somewhere on a hard drive, but I spent 2 months downloading Finale for free for 2 months just to get this thing done and did choir, brass and strings. It was quite an adventurous period to be going through like MIDI files and listening to it by ear. But yeah, so this album kind of has a small place in my heart.
Well, interesting. This is actually a top Pink Floyd record for me. I love the orchestration. I remember when it came out, it was nothing like, I was taken back by the big orchestration buildup and everything. I actually love, there's a version, I think it's on the big box and it's had on some of the CD things of, they toured and played this without the orchestra. And I love
Yep.
their versions of this whole piece. It's, what is it, 23 minutes or 24 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's a
23.
beautifully long piece. This actually is one of my all-time favorite album covers by far. And I like
Yeah.
before they put the name on it, they did the sticker later, and
Hmm.
this is where they actually, this is a printer. Yeah, this is, I think, the second pressing, American pressing. Originally did not have a sticker. It had like a sticker over the shrink. But I love
Yeah,
this record. And I think this is a good time. I'm going to just quickly show this book. This is an amazing book of Hypnosis. Hypnosis, the design firm that did almost, except, all the Pink Floyd records after their third, I believe, did a lot of McCartney records, did Peter Gabriel. And this is a beautiful thing of the whole, their art collective, all the
yeah.
album things. It talks how they did 10cc, things like that. So I'm a big fan of cover design, cover art, and Hypnosis. What they did for Pink Floyd, it was almost like a member of their band. It was really
For
a
sure.
visible part of it. And we'll get into that when we get into, obviously, Animals and that. But to me, as simple as this is, I think it is a brilliant cover. And I'm blanking out the guy's name from Hypnosis, the main guy, Storm Thorgerson.
Storm
Yeah,
Thorgerson.
yeah. He drove around the English countryside and took these pictures himself to find that right cow, the
Yeah,
right cows, and just a great record. But you're
yeah.
right. It hasn't been a fan favorite or even a band favorite for a long time. There's something about it. It just hit me at a right time because it was so different.
There's a really cool book. I don't know if you're aware of this. It's on my bookshelf. Do you want me to grab it real quick and show you?
Hey, this is America. We can do whatever we want for the time being.
All right, let me grab this. There's a couple of Pink Floyd books I'm going to pull out, actually, that are notable. Have you ever checked out this book here? It's called The Flaming Cow.
Don't know it.
It's actually done by Ron Giesen. There's a foreword by Nick Mason. This actually is all about the making of Adam Heart Mother.
Oh, wow. I'd love that.
There's photos taken from the recording sessions. I'll kind of show them off here. And there's like notes with Ron Giesen's orchestrations. Let me try to pull out some notable ones. There's Roger and David there. So it's a really great in-depth read. I actually got this at the time when I was starting to score it, thinking I could find some tad bits. I found very little, but it's a very insightful kind of backstory behind the making.
So what do you play? What do you play?
I am a one-man band.
You have one of those things with the drum machine, accordion, and a little monkey.
Yeah. So I took piano lessons for about 5 or 6 years. That was my main instrument. And they always say that once you've kind of mastered that, you can kind of adapt it to other things. So I did that for so many years. I took percussion lessons for a bit. I played bass drum in the marching band and did all kinds of other stuff in the concert ensemble, taught myself guitar and bass, and basically that's it.
There you go. That's an amazing thing to score something like that. But anyway, I love it.
It was adventurous.
Okay. Here we go. This record, Metal, is very special to me for a lot of reasons. First of all, I love it. One of These Days, oh my God, what a great opening. And just the slow vocal as that builds up and it just comes as crescendo, I just love that. Almost starts as an instrumental. It's basically like an instrumental, but this is going to be the TMI record on this video. And TMI is
yes,
too much information.
Of course.
Not when the record came out, but several years later, and I won't mention a date because it's for a lot of reasons. This is the reissue, but first of all, I loved Echoes on this record, and I just love this record. It's spacey. To me, this might be their first perfect record for me.
Yeah.
But my parents were away for a weekend, and my girlfriend came over to the house. And I had a record player at the time that you'd stack records, which we don't do now, but whatever. It was a component system because I had a component, so it was separates, but it had the changer you could stack records, and I never did that. Except she came over, and basically I stacked about 6 records because and anyway, to the song Echoes, I lost my virginity. So to this day, I always remember, like the way, I don't remember if this was the first record on the stack or the middle, I'm not going there. But,
Wow.
of course I always like think of it, well, hey, that's like 23 minutes, isn't it?
It buys you some time.
23 minutes, 31 seconds to be precise. So I love this record anyway, not just because of it, but that's a good story. So, I mean, San
Wow.
Tropez is really great. God, what else can I say about it? Again, another interesting Hypnosis cover. One of their most surreal, not
Yep.
really spacey, almost. Anyway, great record. Yeah, yeah.
You just the band on the gatefold.
See, you look like you could fit it right in the band. You actually remind me the way you look like. There's a guy named Greg Elmore who was the drummer of Quicksilver Messenger Service, and you look a lot
Okay.
like him back in '68, '67. So, all right.
My mother said sometimes my mother says that I kind of give her David Gilmour vibes a little bit, just a
Wait,
teeny
yeah,
tiny bit.
okay,
It's the Jesus look.
that's okay.
Obscured by Clouds. This was the second soundtrack that the Floyd did for Barbet Schroeder. This honestly is a criminally underrated album right here. Granted, because at the same time that they were working on this, Dark Side was being performed live, and this was kind of just something that they did real quick. And for working at such a fast pace, it actually is a solid album. It opens up with the title track, which is like this drone with the electronic drums going on. It's really awesome. Burning Bridges is cool. What's the Deal is the highlight of this album. It is just a beautiful, kind of long lost track. Some people kind of glance over this, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Childhood's End is pretty cool. Free 4, which is
3/4 was like the almost the radio friendly hit. I think this is almost like their first semi-commercial record. That was a bunch of like shorter pieces of music. And very accessible. I loved this record right when it came out and played this all the time. This was again, not aside from the spacier stuff, this was the most accessible I could turn on other people to at the time.
Cool. Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic album. And yeah, like I said, definitely one that's definitely underrated, gets overlooked. It's definitely worth a listen. And like you said, a little bit more accessible too in terms of the shorter songs.
Yeah, later I guess it was not until the 80s that there was in San Francisco, there's a lot of movie theaters that had retrospective and independent films, and I finally saw La Vallée, which is
Really?
Mudman and these. It's like an adventure thing, but it's just a little bit surreal. I mean, it's not a great film, but it was just I had known the music so well by that point. It was great seeing it. But I love this movie, and this is gonna, as you just said, Pink Floyd started doing the first time I saw Pink Floyd 4 times. First time I saw them was at Winterland in San Francisco in September 1972. And that's when they played the entire Dark Side of the Moon. And this was 6 months before it came out. So it was amazing. It was good, but obviously none of us knew it. We didn't know what they were doing. We did, until like after I read the review of it, that they did a whole suite from their new album, which I didn't really know what that meant. We didn't know the songs, but it was an amazing thing. Of course, they did the other stuff and then I think it ended with Echoes maybe, but the big heart of the show was Dark Side of the Moon. And it's pretty amazing. In those days, it was a whole different thing. So we're talking fall of 1972. I was just out of high school and, it was just out of high school and it was a great show. So
that's insane.
Yeah. So that led into what you're going to go into next.
Real quick, before you get into the next album, I have to mention this. It's kind of on the same level as your Echo story, but I of course have it on DVD and Blu-ray, but I also have a bootleg of the soundtrack.
Pompeii,
Pink Floyd Live in Pompeii.
Great video.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest concert films ever. So my girlfriend and I, we do like rotating movie nights. I show her all the music, concert films and documentaries. She shows me all her indie stuff. This was the first film that we watched together where we actually told each other that we love each other. So Pink Floyd in Pompeii has a special place in our hearts.
See, I think a lot of women, when they see David Gilmour at 24, 25 with his shirt off playing in Ruins, that'll just melt any woman, I think, right?
I'll twist it up. She actually has a crush on Roger Waters.
Oh. We're gonna get into Roger Waters later. Some conversation from my point of view, but go ahead.
I think you're next.
Uh, did you do Love LA? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know what I can say about Dark Side of the Moon that hasn't been said, right? Who would have thought that, was it 400 weeks in a row, this was on the Billboard Top 100 charts. One of the biggest selling albums of all time. That's not a greatest hits record. I think it just surprised everyone. A big part of it, obviously, I mean, aside from Pink Floyd, who I mentioned before, Alan Parsons, who really, went to a local place and tape recorded all the clocks going off at a clock shop not far from Abbey Road. Again, another Hypnosis. I don't think this is by any means one of the best covers, but maybe that's what's great about it, because it is kind of simple. It is so simple.
Yeah.
And I remember at my parents' house, there was a staircase went down to the garage, and the green poster that came into it of the pyramids with the green tint, I had over that. So you'd walk down into that. Yeah, you can show it. And it was for years, even after I moved out, went to college and came back. Well, there's a green version of that was on the original record. I don't
Really
even,
interesting.
yeah, it was a green tint. And sticker, weren't there stickers? I can't remember now.
Yes, actually, I'll pull
See, there
them
we
all
go.
out.
I used to remember all this stuff. Yeah, right.
Very
Postcard
artsy looking.
stickers. I mean, it is a perfect album. For a while,
It is.
it's one of those things that, again, as I said ad nauseum, and some people hate me saying all the time, I worked in record stores from like 73, record business, 73 to about 79. And there are certain records that for years or even decades I couldn't listen to because you'd hear them in the store. Like Dark Side of the Moon was one of them, even though that came out before I worked in stores. Hotel California, Fleetwood Mac Rumors, Frantic
Yep.
Kind Live, all great albums. But I heard them so fucking much that I could not listen to them literally for like 25 years.
Wow.
Now I like them again. I mean, they've been around 40 years now, so it doesn't really matter. But this record was like that. I mean, again, I played it when the reissues came out again, and I just realized how great it really is. I mean, it's not a cliche to say, oh, you got to get Dark Side of the Moon to have a nice stereo and check it out, but it really is an amazing recorded. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best engineered albums. Alan Parsons worked on it, of course. And another cool thing, too, and I figured you probably already know this since you're a big Beatles guy, but when they were doing the sessions for like the spoken word bits that are interlaced in the album, they did interview Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney did some
in Linda. Yeah, right. But they didn't use it on the final album. I'm not sure what the reason was.
Well, what I heard, the reason was they didn't want the voices to sound so specific, and people would have remembered McCartney. They would recognize McCartney. They wanted someone more obtuse, more, not known, not a famous
unknown. Yeah.
So they think using Paul's voice would take people out of the listening experience, saying, "Oh, that's Paul McCartney." Like when a famous actor shows up in a movie, if Brad Pitt shows up in some little obscure thing in one scene halfway through, you start saying, "Oh my God, it's Brad Pitt." You didn't know he was billed on it, and it takes you maybe out of the story, takes you out of the moment. It's kind of that. I think that was the main reason. I don't know if they ever issued it on any of the. I never got the immersion sets or anything. So
I have the immersion sets. There's no real in terms of outtakes from those kind of sessions. There's nothing too specific in regards to that. But I do have, with the box sets and such, as much as my favorite band is Kiss, Pink Floyd is a band where if there is a box set, a deluxe, package, I will buy it on impulse. And, like I was watching the box set video that you did with Jamie. I remember that when that early years set was announced, I freaked out because for many, many years, EMI, the Floyd's camp, whatever, just never gave that period emphasis. And I was literally going to school part-time and working part-time. I was eating, things called Uncrustables. It's like a peanut butter and jelly, and it's all kind of prepackaged.
Yeah.
I was literally, refraining from buying mall food because I work at an FYE located at my local mall, and just saving up my money to buy this set. And not exactly the ideal investment for a part-time college student, but hey, it was worth it.
How come we didn't do a Kiss video instead of Pink Floyd? I actually saw Kiss once. My friend worked for Polygram, that had Casablanca in they were on Casablanca, and he gave
Yeah.
me the promos. And I remember the set of promos he gave me one day were the 4 solo records, the same covers.
Wow.
I never listened to them, and I finally gave it away like about 4 years later. And I went to see them. I can't remember what year. It must have been 78 or 79. Whenever, I don't know when they toured, but I saw a free show because he worked for the label. I had a great time. I loved it, but I just never got into playing the records at home. But that's,
Yeah, I mean, at this point now, you can say that it's all about the show. It's for the kids to see, and I mean, musically, I mean, granted, even though I love them, it's not as proficient as some of the more musically talented guys, but it's good fun rock and roll for me.
If you watch some of my videos, sometimes I beat a dead horse. Like I'll pick on Kiss, or like to pick on Billy Joel, I like to pick on Phil Collins. So like,
I'm a Genesis fan, so that hurts.
Well, I'm a Genesis fan when Phil Collins was playing drums and Peter Gabriel was singing. But if you watch Vinyl Verse, Build the Vinyl Verse, he's such a Genesis fan. I always tease him about Phil Collins. So
Poor
just
guy.
All right.
Wish You Were Here. Of course, that's what Norman just showed is the original kind of cover, and then it comes in the black polythene bag. A very melancholy album. So basically, after they had accomplished what they did with Dark Side, they had no clue what to do. And originally, they were going to create an album of music played on household objects, which
how do you follow
personally,
Dark Side Up, right?
Yeah, you really don't know. And to be honest, I mean, Pink Floyd was always of an experimental nature that like every year they were kind of devoting something to like whichever album they were going to put out. So for like they had Adam Heart Mother, then they went into metal, then they had Obscured by Clouds going into Dark Side. I really would have loved to see them do that Household Objects album. Whatever they did is on the immersion box sets, but instead, they were rehearsing, and David Gilmour played this chord that includes the 4 distinctive notes that signals the beginning of Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which is, of course, about their leader, Syd Barrett. And the story goes, it's been said many times that when they were mixing the track, the man himself was in the recording studio and no one recognized him. He was
a big, fat, bald guy.
Bald, gained weight, and shaved his eyebrows. It's sad. I mean, there's pictures that circulate of him at those sessions. It's absolutely horrible. But a beautiful piece of music. And then, of course, it kind of delves into the theme of this record because Roger Waters was really fighting to have this be a sort of thematic album, whereas David Gilmour wanted an album that included Shine On and 2 other songs called You've Gotta Be Crazy and Raving and Drooling, which we'll get to in a little bit. But essentially, Roger won that argument, and this was kind of the start of him sort of dominating the band, whereas with Dark Side, it was very much a group kind of unit effort. This is kind of signaling like a dictatorship sort of within the band. But aside from that, you have, Welcome to the Machine, Have a Cigar, which does have Roy Harper on vocals. There's a version with both David and Roger singing on the box set.
Yeah, they all tried to sing it, and they just weren't knocking it out. And they brought in Roy Harper. A lot of people had no idea about that.
Yeah, it did not work.
He nailed it.
It did not work. Yeah, he definitely did. He actually sang it with them once at I think it was at the Nebworth show that they did in '75. He actually sang it with them. But yeah, it's a very beautiful album, but it is absolutely melancholy, very somber, but very adventurous musically. I mean, Richard Wright's, synthesizer work on Welcome to the Machine is absolutely adventurous. And it's just a great listen indeed.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Animals.
Yeah.
I really like this album, and to me, it might be the most minimal in a way.
It is. It is.
I saw this tour, and I met a guy who I worked with years later, who was one of the audio guys who worked on this tour, and he was telling me about all the production hassles and intricacies getting that friggin' pig blown up. So I saw the tour, great tour, a great show. When Hypnosis put this together, it's the Battersea Park Station.
Battersea Power Station.
That in if you've seen Help, where the power goes out in the Battersea.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Station.
years later, I'm watching this movie because, of course, I got into the Beatles when I was a kid. But now, recently watching, I was like, wait, there it is.
There it is. And it's funny, there's
That's so
another
awesome.
a companion kind of building on the Thames, which was rehabilitated about 20 years ago now, 15, 20, which is the Tate Modern Museum, which is amazing. It's in an old another power station. When they were shooting this, the pig got loose and floated away, and there was a whole brouhaha there. Um, I like this album. You know, just pigs on the wing, dogs, pigs, sheep. You know, it again. It's pretty much all Waters in terms
Yeah.
of pushing and writing with some Gilmore. And I like this album a lot. I like the minimalism, but I started getting, and I don't know if I realized it at the time, anxious or a little perturbed and a little tired of Waters' voice. And this will come out. It's a personal thing, you know.
Yeah. I get it.
All of you people who are writing fucking comments on that The Wall is the greatest fucking thing, wait till we get to that album, and I'll tell you my opinion at the time. I've softened it, but I love this record. And again, it's their most. Yeah, I don't want to say it's like they're unplugged because it's not really an unplugged record,
No.
but it is. It's the Less Is More album, I think.
Perhaps it could be seen as their punk album, maybe.
Yeah, well, again,
Perhaps.
it's so minimal, which is really different for them.
This was recorded at they actually got their own studios called Britannia Row Studios, and it was recorded there. I'm not sure if maybe the studio wasn't well equipped with the right acoustics or something, but it definitely has a stripped down feel to it. There is a remix that has been done for this album. I think it's in surround sound, maybe stereo, but apparently Roger Waters is kind of holding it hostage because of the inner, I guess, political ramblings within that band. But that's
he could be like Neil Young a little bit, except Neil Young basically fights with himself. I'm going to put something out. Or he fights with Crosby, Stills and Nash or Buffalo Springfield. That's a whole. I'm doing a Neil Young thing in the next week with someone, so
cool.
That's going to be probably like 6-hour video. No.
All right, getting to the biggin, The Wall. Now, the story goes, and this actually entails with the tour that Norman saw, the In the Flesh tour from '77. At the last show at Montreal, there was a fan kind of scrambling at the stage, and Roger was really pissed off, and he spat at the kid's face. And that kind of sparked the flame of what would become The Wall. And it's about this character named Pink who kind of builds up this metaphorical wall around him after all of these various things go on in his life, his mother, his wife, and all this and that. And then at midway through, he kind of turns into a dictator and he's comfortably numb. And it's a crazy story. I can recite all the words to the trial by memory because I've listened to it so many times. And of course, as Norman will get into, there was a movie made with about this album, which was directed by Alan Parker, starring Bob Geldof. A rather interesting film. I think it's a shame that they did not use the concert footage that was filmed, and that's another thing that Roger is holding hostage of. He has all those tapes, and this year is actually no, it was last year. Last year was the 40th anniversary. That would have been ideal to show those concert videos.
Yeah, I like The Wall, but I think in a way it's an overwrought, bloated mess sometimes. However, I like the repetitive theme, we don't need, and that whole thing. This is where, for me personally, I know it's like a fan favorite and it's like their biggest selling. They brought in Bob Ezrin to produce with them because I think the label, and I don't know, I'm surprised the label had any clout. They wanted them to have a hit again because their last two, even though Animals Sold and Wish You Were Here, they weren't big hit albums. This is like their biggest selling album next to Dark Side. And that was a huge single. And it has that, this is a time when disco was happening and everything. So you got that kind of, you don't think of that as a disco riff, and it's a slower it's Pink Floyd doing disco in their way, in a way. I really started disliking when Roger Waters was singing, when he was yelling things he started doing.
That's his motif.
It totally. And I am in the minority here, and all you friggin' commenters just go away. I have no problem. I don't censor anything unless you're mean-spirited, but you can tell me I'm wanker. That's fine. So for years, in fact, there was 2 albums like that. One of my favorite band too is The Who, and everyone like creams over Quadrophenia, which I think is overwrought too. But there's some brilliant stuff in it. And I'm not usually one that says, like people say, oh, the White Album should have been a single album, and you can cut all the.
Yeah.
And I get it. That's an artistic thing, and it's so subjective. What I'm saying here,
Yeah.
it's just I did listen to it again through 2 or 3 times when the reissue came out 3 or 4 years ago, and I enjoyed it more. But again, I'll put on any other Pink Floyd except one coming up than that.
Are we getting there now?
Well, you pick that album. The next album, I think I'm gonna have to take what they call, I don't forget what they call it in poker, a pass, because the next album, pull it out. Yeah, I realize I no longer have this record, and I'm usually a completist of a band like Pink Floyd, and I don't know what happened to my copy. I thought I'd at least have the CD, and I don't have that. And then I kind of looked it up to say, why don't I have that? And then I remembered why I don't have it. This is the one about Maggie Thatcher, right? A lot of it.
Thatcher, Reagan, just the whole kind of political climate of the time.
I fucking hate that record. Again, Roger Waters, if you're watching this, I hate the final cut. Come on, Roger. Somebody tell Roger Waters, like 6 degrees of separation. Let's do a thread.
Oh my God.
Roger Waters is out there. I fucking hate the final. Mazzy says so.
Oh, geez. Yeah, this album, honestly.
Tell me I'm wrong. Prove I'm wrong.
With this album here, I think I can rarely play this album, only because you really need to be in a really down mood to listen to it. And if you're very vocal with this, I'm going to describe this album in the most crucial sense. It's Roger Waters. What's that?
Did I say I hated it?
Yeah.
I did say already I hated it. Okay. Sorry, I interrupted.
This is Roger Waters crying into a microphone with the Royal Philharmonic accompanying him in the background. That is all this album is. That's essentially it. There's only one track on here that sounds remotely like a Pink Floyd song, and it's kind of almost like an off-brand version of Another Brick in the Wall called Now Not John, or Not Now John, I'm sorry. The title track is a beautiful piece. It kind of has the strings to like Comfortably Numb playing in the background. But other than that, you have Michael Kamen at the piano, Roger doing his traditional wailing vocals, and there's also the triple echo effect. That's another motif that he likes to use. It's all over this record, and
I probably should get the reissue and play it again to see. Like,
what's that?
I should probably buy the reissue and play it again just to experience pain.
This is what this copy is. I have an original pressing, which honestly, I got it from a collection. It looked like it may have never been played or played once. Like, it's a dead mint copy. And what's interesting too, subsequent versions of the final cut starting back in 2004 included the song When the Tigers Broke Free, which was in the Wall movie but did not fit on the album, so they squeezed it onto here. So it's on the reissue. Maybe
here's the vinyl challenge. VCLT me that album, somebody out there. Someone's going to do it. That's the thing. I've been getting a couple things lately. I got 2 CDs in the mail, which I shouldn't. I'm straying here for a moment. If you're going to send me something, put your friggin' name on it. I have no idea who sent me something. So. All right. I don't have this on vinyl. This is the only one I didn't have on vinyl here, but you can show it. This is from the 93 collection of CDs.
It's the Shine On box set.
Yeah, which I kind of really liked. It didn't have everything, which was weird, and it had the spines all make up to be Dark Side of the Moon when you line them up and everything, which is kind of fun. This is when they dumped their lead weight of Roger Waters at Dawn.
Yes.
It's a little more commercial. What is it? Expecting, Not Expecting to Fly. What is it? Learning to Fly was kind of
Learning to Fly.
It was all over MTV, as I recall, for a while. It was kind of a nice video. I like this record. Again, I don't love it. I think what I like about it, because I'm a big fan of David Gilmour's guitar playing and his voice. His voice is so soothing. He could have been an MOR singer sometimes, but he has not a wide range. But I like the way he sings on this. I just think it's a little more easy listening than I would like, but we'll get to something even more easy listening as we get to the end of their catalog. But I like
Yeah,
it.
it's not bad. I mean, to be honest, in terms of how this album went about being made, it's very much as the final cut is a Roger Waters solo album. I would see this as a David Gilmour solo album, despite the fact that Nick Mason does play on it and Richard Wright kind of adds some keyboard flourishes. But like you have a lot of session players on this.
Because I like
I think you have Tony Levin plays the Chapman stick on a track. Carmine Appice, I think, plays on something. Phil Manzanero from Roxy Music. I mean, there's a whole cast of characters on this album.
yeah, it's not bad. It's not great, but you know, after this, it's a whole different Pink Floyd. You know,
Yeah,
I think this is one of their best covers.
absolutely, for sure. It's a very striking cover indeed.
And the reissue is amazingly beautifully
Yes.
printed. So I would say, and this came out really when vinyl wasn't really a heyday. What year was this? I don't remember.
94.
Okay, see, there you go. Vinyl was secondary, so I wasn't buying vinyl, but I just love this. You know, it's kind of based on the Easter Island statues, but Aeronautics again, a great Hypnosis cover, wonderful artwork.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous album. This, for me, musically, this is as true as a Pink Floyd album could get in their later period. This has Richard Wright and Nick Mason kind of coming more back into the fold. It's a more unified album. Some kind of see it as very much a sort of just mellow kind of record. And I guess, I mean, that's just the common musical motif of the Floyd. It's just all very mellow in the key of E minor. That's basically what you come to expect. But on this album, you get High Hopes, which was that's the big notable one. Marooned, which is an instrumental, which actually won a Grammy. Keep Talking, which kind of ties in with the whole concept of the record, which is about communication. There's the Stephen Hawking bits and pieces used on it. It's a very beautiful album, and it's very easy listening. It's very mellow. It's really awesome. Out of the later Floyd stuff, this is the one.
Yeah, it's a good sounding record, and it is. You know, I don't grab for it a lot. I did get the reissue because I had the CD, and I really forgot about it. I just went to a store. I wasn't going to buy it, but it just looks so great on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love artwork and really great artwork and production, so I had to get it. Again, I don't reach for it, but I enjoy it.
Yeah,
But
I actually have.
not essential. Definitely, if we're talking, if those of you out there are looking for us to tell you what to buy, when not to buy, that's not an essential record to buy.
I showed this on my channel a little while ago. I have the box set version.
Ah.
This came out in 2014. You get the 7 inches, 12-inch singles, postcards, posters, and
Marbles,
all kinds of
marbles.
Yeah, no marbles in this one. The immersion sets have the marbles.
Right, that's right here.
I always joke that if a box set of this sort comes with replica tickets, I always joke that when time travel becomes a thing, they'll be redeemable.
There you go.
That's the ongoing joke.
Yeah, the last time I saw Floyd was the Wall tour. That was the very last time. So I feel I saw them Wall, Animals, Pre. I saw them about 4th time. Anyway, I don't remember one other time. Okay, I guess we'll end with at least in the real sense. This is sort of their Free as a Bird record in a way, and I use that as kind of like the Beatles taking a tape of John Lennon, a demo cassette, and with the help of Jeff Lynne making 2 new Beatles songs, tapes of Richard of Wright, and this is their more ethereal MOR record, middle of the road record. It's this is a great record, a beautiful cover again, beautiful package. This is probably one of the better Pink Floyd records to get a massage to. Massage, because it is sort of an ambient type of record, and there's very little vocals. I almost wish there was more vocals by David Gilmour.
Yeah, the only track that features vocals is the closing track, Louder Than Words, which is the epitaph that they're leaving on, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's very easy listening, very smooth sounding. I have a bit of fondness for this because for me, I got into Pink Floyd in 2012. I was a freshman in high school, and this was basically, this is the only Pink Floyd record that I can live to see come out as a brand new album. So it was kind of a big deal. And before I got the vinyl, I got the CD, DVD deluxe set. It comes with the surround sound mix and everything. And I listened to it that night when it came out. And, I enjoyed it. It's very smooth, very atmospheric. There's some new bits and pieces that David and Nick worked up. There's actually this kind of ties in with the Division Bell. I'm not sure if you may know this, but originally there was going to be this ambient record called The Big Spliff come out at the same time as the Division Bell. Yeah, apparently they only scratched the surface of that on this album. They only used a couple of small bits and pieces, so that still exists in the vaults. But basically they took a lot of jams that they did back in like 93 or so before they did the Division Bell, and they put this thing together. And I think it's a nice kind of final note to leave things on, I would say.
Where did you come in on? What was your first Pink Floyd record that you got?
So if I'm going to be very, very technical, the very first Pink Floyd, I guess, album, can we count compilations maybe?
Yeah. That's not
okay. So oddly enough, this was my introduction. This is called A Foot in the Door, the best of Pink Floyd. Nice.
I pulled this out just as an NCODA thing to show this is a good overview. And I suggest people who don't want a whole catalog, this is a great listen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, it consolidates everything to 2 LPs. There is the Echoes compilation, which is a bit more in depth, which is 4 LPs.
Right.
That I'd love to see a reissue of that. But
what I like about this too is it's not in chronological order. It really mixes it up. So it's a better listen than some records.
Yeah, everything's like cross-faded together to sound like it's this big flowing piece of music. But I remember this was way before I got into collecting vinyl. I downloaded this on iTunes.
2018. This is
the vinyl version came out in 2018, but the it originally came out in 2011 when they remastered the catalog. So it's just something else to put out. But I downloaded it, and I just figured I know all these songs. I might as well download it. Gave it a listen, and it just listened to it more and more, grew to love it. And my first Floyd albums that I think I remember picking up were Metal and Piper.
Great. Okay. I'm going to close out with just one last share, and this is a book. And I'm showing this came out in like 91, 2 or 3, early 90s. And this is called Saucerful of Secrets, the Pink Floyd Odyssey. And I'm showing this partly because it's a really great book. And it's written by someone who was a friend of mine who's no longer with us, unfortunately. His name is Nicholas Schaffner. He was a New Yorker. Okay. He, in the 70s, he wrote a series of books on the Beatles. The most famous one for Beatle people out there was called The Beatles Forever. He did a whole thing of John Lennon with Pete Shotton, who was a childhood friend. Did a lot of rock and roll books. Really good guy. He used to come up to San Francisco to visit. We'd hang out. And he was really into psychedelia and Bob Dylan. And I'd drive him around the Haight and North Beach. So we'd see the beat poetry scenes. We'd go see where the Jefferson Airplane house was and the Grateful Dead house. And I'd go to New York, and he had a really cool little house in the Village, in the West Village. But really kind of cool book, probably long out of print. Maybe you can get a Kindle or a paperback. But
I've never heard of it.
I think it might have been the first biography after they split up, as I recall. I don't really follow Pink Floyd in terms of all the books, but Nicholas Schaffner did this, and I highly recommend it for further reading. So
that's awesome. I've never heard of that book. I have to check it out.
Well, I forgot I had it, and then I realized, God, I remember driving around when this came out, and he was in San Francisco, and we were playing a Dylan album that just came out at the time in the, I don't know, in the 90s, obviously. And he was telling me stories about working on this book, and it just occurred to me that, I need to grab it if I could find it, and I found it.
That's awesome.
Anyway, that was fun. I don't know how long it doesn't matter. Pink Floyd, 15 albums, 15 studio albums plus a few comps. We didn't do any live records. I don't even have anymore the one with the LED dot light.
Pulse.
Pulse. Do you have that?
I have the CD with the LED light. Obviously, it's not working, but I did pick out the new reissue that came out. I did an unboxing for this, and that was like the first little spark that I got from my YouTube channel unboxing this thing. It was so cool. But this was one that a lot of people wanted to see come back out, and it's a great album. You get Stuff from the Division Bell, Momentary Lapse. You get
Right.
Astronomy Domini Live,
I used to
Dark
have the
Side
CD
Live.
years ago. Yeah, I don't even have the
Yeah,
CD for some reason. Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll hashtag Pink Floyd and we'll get a lot of viewers. But hey,
yeah.
Dylan, thanks.
Yes,
I need
thank
to,
you very
I
much, Norman.
love doing these. I love, meeting some new people that I haven't really had any contact with, and this has been great. So
Yeah, thank you.
anyway,
This is an honor. Thank you.
thank you, vinyl community. Thank you, Pink Floyd lovers. Thank you, record collectors. Mazzy loves you. Dylan probably loves you too.
I do. I love you
Okay.
all.
Take care.